Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is 8:02 a.m. You're listening to and watching Good Morning, Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. It's Friday, and, not only did you make it, but we all made it. It really does feel good to be here at the weekend. It's the 8th of September. We've got a great show for you today. If you were here in person, you could taste fantastic donuts from Harner's Bakery, an absolutely wonderful location with great pastries. We have a live studio audience today. That's one cool aspect of this morning. So I want to say good morning to our friends in the studio today, Tracy Duran, Norma Peterson, and Jennifer Ryan Mate, and also Josie Mendoza Geller, who is here in not just the flesh. She got here. We're here. We have her on a sign here with us. She is in Carbondale, enjoying things. Our guest today is Mr. Jim Cherry, author of the Lion Communique. So we'll be talking to a great author today, going over the book, and he also has an event this Sunday at Java Plus, which we will be learning about. Jim, how you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling great.
All right. You look good. We're gonna dive into the Lion Communique and get to know all about this great book. Great. And the event's from noon to 3.
Yes, sir.
Noon to 3. Okay. Saul Olivas, good morning to you. How are you doing, Mr. Curtis? I'm all right. I'm going to see how I'm doing past 9:45 a.m. this morning. Tracy here. Good morning to all the GAMS fam. Okay. So as you guys know, I'm going to get this out the way right now. I'm going to tell you the weather. You might have missed Aurora weather this morning real early at 7 because I know some of you, Curtis, I like to sleep until 8. Okay, but here's the weather for today. We got a high of 73 degrees, a nighttime high tonight of 62. Tomorrow will be 78 degrees, and Sunday will be 81 degrees as well. So there is your forecast on the screen for you. Going into next week, Monday is 78, Tuesday is 72 degrees. So be aware of that. So, Jim, you were born in Chicago.
Yeah.
How long have you been a writer?
It depends. Maybe all my life, or at least since. My mother used to read to me all the time, and
okay.
so I've been at least reading since ever I can, remember. And I had the pictures in my head all the time, and I decided I wanted to be a writer when I was 12, and it maybe started a little before that. I was in like 3rd grade. And I saw a whole bunch of the girls, my classmates, around one of my friends, Ricky Lofgren, and I looked to see what he was doing, and he was like drawing Peanuts cartoon characters, and he had all these little girls around him. And so I said, hey, I want to be an artist. And
shout out to Ricky Lofgren. Right?
Yeah, wherever you are now. But the problem with that is I couldn't draw, so when probably the first induction for me that writers could be artists was like Ernest Hemingway's Reputation, because I heard that you can be an artist and be a writer, and I said, hey, I can write.
Right.
So I've been writing I've been keeping journals since I was about 12.
Does writing give you any sense of any relief? Is it therapeutic for you? Do you do that to relax? Is that a way that you blow off steam, as they say?
I don't know if it blows off steam, or I'm sure it's therapeutic. I think it's like the best high I ever had, You get up there and writing, it kind of it's paradoxical. It makes you immortal, at least for a little while.
All right. I get it. I like to draw. When I was young, I would draw a lot. And yeah, it does make me feel like, you know what? I'm the creator. This is my space. Like I can, yes, elephant on the skateboard. Yes, we can do that. I asked because I started writing a book and I've not yet finished it. And when I was writing it, it was difficult to deal with the writer's block that eventually came sometimes, and you get stuck. But when I was writing, I did feel liberated. Like I felt like I was bearing my soul, and that felt good. That really did. So your current book is The Lion Communique, but you've written two others, The Last Stage and The Door Examined.
Yeah, The Doors Examined. Actually, I've written a novel before that, Becoming Angel. The Doors, The Last Stage, is kind of it's a fiction book about. Maybe I should go to The Doors Examined first because that explains everything. Mm-hmm. I'm actually kind of known in the rock Doors, the rock group, the band, The Doors, as somewhat of a Doors expert.
Okay.
I've written, I used to write a column for about 6 or 7 years called The Doors Examiner Online.
Okay.
I took that from being like having me and my sister as a subscriber up into the last year. I was in the top 5 rock writers for the Examiner.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Gnarly, dude. Boom, boom, ting.
Yeah, there you go. So I was well known in the Doors community. I know a lot of Jim Morrison's friends, and people have asked me to write forwards for their Doors related books, and I even get mentioned in quite a few acknowledgments about the Doors. So I have this nominal, semi-famous reputation as a Doors expert. So I was writing these articles, and I wrote a review of a Doors book, and it was a favorable review. And the next thing I knew, one of my plans has always been that I was going to write those articles, and as soon as I could, I would do a compilation book.
Okay.
So this publisher, after I wrote that favorable review, the publisher came along and fell right into my evil plan. He says, "Hey, we really liked your review. If you have any ideas for books, just let us know." And I said, "Well, since you mention it,"
Right.
so we did the compilation of, I believe it was like the first 3 years of the Doors Examiner articles.
Okay.
So I had that reputation as a Doors expert, but I always wanted to write fiction. Like I said, one of my earliest influences is Ernest Hemingway,
Mm-hmm.
and so I always wanted to write fiction. So I decided, and the best the advice you get all over the place about how to become a famous writer, or at least become a writer, is to write something that has a genre audience. So of course for me that would be the Doors. So I said, okay, I came across this idea that became The Last Stage, about a singer in a Doors tribute band. They start off really small, and then as get bigger and bigger, he starts meeting record executives and everything, and Jim Morrison's persona goes to his head, and as my niece said, bad things happen. So I wrote The Last Stage I think that's like 12 years ago already. Mm-hmm. I was writing a couple other books. Actually, I was working on another nonfiction book about a band called Hunger. And they were they had one album out in the 60s, and the problem was, and I even had a publisher all lined up for this, and the problem was that I found out that the person that contacted me about writing the book, and wasn't quite truthful about what happened and who he met. He was telling me all these great stories about meeting Jimi Hendrix and hanging out with Jim Morrison and all these other people. And then I started hearing from his bandmates because, I contacted them, doing my research, right? And they said, we lived in Laurel Canyon, but we never even saw Jim Morrison.
Oh, wow.
And,
that's unfortunate to be able to, to get your hopes up.
Yeah.
Especially with your knowledge and research of subject,
Right. Yeah, it was kind of frustrating because I did check things out, and his story was plausible because, you can't keep track of everybody's movements, like especially 50 years ago.
Right.
And, but every time he mentioned something, some incident happening, I checked it, and it was always possible that the Doors were there. Right. And then until his bandmates started, no.
Well, that's why nobody listens to Hunger anymore, right?
Right. And so that kind of after because I blew the whistle on myself with the publisher because I didn't want them. I didn't want them to publish it, and then somebody comes out, and says, "Hey, I was in LA." And by
this time, you're seasoned dealing with publishers, so you knew what you were getting into or lack thereof at this time, right?
Yeah,
at about that time. Okay.
Yeah. I dealt a lot with publishers. And
okay.
That's probably a couple other episodes for you if you'd like.
Oh,
but so kind of after losing that. I kind of said, I haven't had a book out in a while. So what I'm going to do is I had some short stories. So I said, hey, I'm going to whip out a quick book of short stories. I already have 2 or 3, and I can just put together a few more, and boom, and I'll publish a book in like a few months and have something out, right? So that quick book turned out to be the Lion Communique, and it took me about 3 years to write.
Wow. Well, you did it.
Yes, I did it.
Now, the Lion Communique, it has a 5-star rating on Amazon. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How did it feel to get, that's a distinction right there. How did it feel to get that? And we got claps in the background. See? Oh, it's so much better than pushing a button. I mean, you guys at home can't hear it, but I can. How did it feel when you saw that the response from the book and what it's getting?
Yeah. Writers, you sit in a room all by yourself. Maybe you have some music on and your cats. I always thought it was the best writing I was doing. But to see it, I don't know if quantifiable is, but it's actually, I'm being quite amazed and humbled at the reviews I'm getting because it's while I feel it's the best writing I've done, some of the comparisons I get are like blowing my mind,
Well, that's interesting. So let me pick that part. Do you feel this is the best writing you've done, topping the Doors work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I've always been interested in fiction. I've been writing, forever. Like I said, I've been reading for longer than that. And when I was young, my grandmother, she was kind of elderly. She was like in her 80s when I was a little kid. And when she died, unfortunately, she had quite a library that she left us, and of first editions of Mark Twain, Charles Dickens, just everybody,
right.
So,
Louis L'Amour. Were there any of those books? He was my favorite writer when I was a kid.
My grandfather, my grandfather on my mother's side, he was a big Louis L'Amour guy, and so I never really read like kids' books or age appropriate. I was always reading like Huckleberry Finn, and I was reading strange things for a little kid like Charles Dickens, and
right.
So I have that whole class. I don't know, classical background, but it was always just curiosity. I wanted to see, I knew these books were all pretty much leather bound, and like my mother always said these are first editions, and so I was always curious about what they were, and I was just reading them, curious,
So the Lion Communique has 13 stories that examine the struggle between good and evil from multiple perspectives. Good and evil from multiple perspectives. You mean it's just not black and white?
No. For the most part, I don't know how much trouble I can get in with this statement, but a lot of people, they don't necessarily think that they're doing anything evil. There are exceptions, murderers, I don't think they can rationalize it in their head that this is anything good.
Sure.
But for most actions in people's lives, I think they think they're doing the best thing, if not for themselves.
The proverbial greater good, maybe?
Yeah. I don't, I see a lot of gradations between good and evil, and the part that you left out is kind of as you go through the book. I don't know if you noticed or anything, but the book starts out at childhood and childhood experiences and kind of moves up to adulthood. Some themes are explored, but as you get towards the end of the book, the characters are more involved in finding redemption and finding their way out of the night.
The night/darkness?
Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into some of the chapters, and we'll detail them, have you detail them a little bit individually, praise for Jim Cherry. So Jim Cherry is a writer who has paid his dues and now knows the way around his craft. With a hard-earned confidence, his imagination ranges widely from what seems to be a memory of childhood that then echoes an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge to the fictionalized metaphysical and poetic transformation of Jim Morrison. That's from J. Jeff Jones, the author of The Wind Pours by Like Destiny. And then also Jim's forthcoming anthology, read it, reflect upon it, and look for it in Jim's forthcoming anthology of tales that bump into the human condition. And that's a review of Godwired. That's from Paul Levinson. Very cool. All right, so let's detail some of our chapters. The games children play. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's a story that seemingly is about an afternoon in a kid's life. He starts out playing games. He's playing games at a friend's house. They're war games. It's kind of like and by the way, all the events in that really happened to me. All the friends' names are friends I knew when I was a kid. So it's kind of like a great afternoon compressed into one story.
Okay.
All the events.
I'm feeling that. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I didn't have much choice, or the story might be kind of boring. But so and it's like I said, it's just an afternoon of him playing different games, going to different friends' houses. There's some backstories about neighbors and everything, and since it's from my childhood, the Vietnam War kind of intrudes a little bit on it, and then the ending kind of is a surprising ending. Okay, all right. I don't want to ruin it for anybody who wants to read the book.
Like Curtis, don't spoil it for us, man. Scratch that up.
Yeah. I don't want to tell everybody the butler did it. Or
No, right, exactly. I get you, man. May I read a couple of sentences, please?
Whatever you'd like.
All right. After lunch, I was bored. Wesley and I had spent most of the morning in his room, and I wanted to go out looking for some other adventure. Mrs. Lamont was very protective of Wesley and wouldn't let him go out, so she shooed me out of the house. I like that part. I don't know if anybody else would go to a friend's house when you're young, and the mama's like, can you come out and play? Yeah, sure, Brad, out there. Who is that? Nah, get out of here. He's busy. He's not busy. He's 8 years old. Who's busy when you're 8? And then kapow. I brought down the arm of the G.I. Joe with the kung fu grip on the top of the head of one of the enemy G.I. Joes who was guarding my G.I. Joe. He made his way out of the popsicle stick fort Wesley Lamont and I had made, weaving in and out of divisions of plastic soldiers, blue and green armies, facing off against each other. So here's what I liked about that. And this is for any of the listeners, if you recall. I'll take you back a little bit. The army guy soldier bag that you used to get for 75 cents that had 30 of them in it, it was the most boring toy in the world. But in those sentences, you gave it more life than that little thing contained. That was really good. That was excellent, excellently described. Weaving in and out of divisions of plastic soldiers, a fort made of popsicle sticks. I remember that, like, you know, then they had Lincoln Logs. I can remember like right. putting those sticks together and trying to make some stuff. But the other thing that I thought was really cool about it was that it does give the feel of kind of like the Indian in the cupboard, you know, where you brought to life normal inanimate objects. I thought that was really well done. So that's a really great story there. Now I'm reading this because my printer doesn't work. I'm doing this the new fashioned way, which is on Amazon. So I gotta like push buttons and everything. Okay. The next chapter is As Good a Name as Any. Talk a little bit about that.
That is what I consider one of the best stories in the book.
Okay.
It has a twist ending that so far no one has gotten. Which I kind of pride myself on it. It started out in 1988. In 1987. I'm probably giving away how old I am, but
well, it's in the book.
Yeah, that's true too.
It's on like page 183 about the author.
Well, shucks, you blew my cover, man. All right. So it's coming up on the 100th year anniversary of Jack the Ripper. So I wanted to write a story. Maybe there was a contest going on or something, but writing it just trying to think of putting yourself in Jack the Ripper's head just kind of bent me out of shape, kind of weirded me out. Mm-hmm. And so I stopped writing it. But a friend of mine, Chris, he gave me the ending. And so I always remembered it because it's a great ending, right? So, you're kind of following, it's from the point of view of a soldier in World War I. Okay. He's describing who he is. You kind of figure out who he is as you're reading it. Nominally Jack the Ripper.
Right.
It explains how he got to World War I and everything, and there's the ending. But so that's the ending is from my friend Chris, and I do think it. Like I said, I think it's one of my better written stories in the book.
Why is that?
I like it.
Okay.
I like how it progresses. When you're writing, sometimes you're just sitting there and you don't know where you're going, what's going to happen next, and then boom, just like that, suddenly you have. And like I said earlier, it's like the best high you've ever had, or I've ever had, and and suddenly, boom, this comes to you, and it's like, where did that come from? You know, and you're just writing down as fast as you can, and it's a lot of that happened, and I think it's a good story.
So, is your work influenced by your growing up in Chicago?
my work is
particularly the 60s and 70s of Chicago.
In this instance, these stories, yes.
Okay.
Not everything I've written is, well, maybe I don't know. The Doors, the Doors books. It's a '60s band, and,
Right. Sure.
The '60s. I was born in 1960, and I always like to say, of course, I was around in the '60s, but I missed everything, all the cool stuff.
Right.
I was too young. I heard about things happening. I've of course heard about the Democratic
Convention in Chicago.
In Chicago. Mayor Daley was big in our family. Actually, my grandfather, he was a law professor, and one of his students was a Richard J. Daley. So there was always that connection. So growing up in the 60s, I think it did influence me a lot. Like I said, I came of age in the 70s, so there was just this feeling of missing everything. By the time I was old enough to do stuff, go to concerts and stuff. Everything was over.
Right. Yep. Missed it all. Yeah. People are like, who? The Beatles? Who are they?
Yeah.
Like, dude, I'm late. So the next chapter is Dawn's Highway. Talk a little bit about that, please. The time is 8:28 a.m.
That's for the Doors fans. That's a Jim Morrison story. It's based on an actual event that happened in his life. One weekend, he went out to he and two friends disappeared into the desert. Jim and only one of the other friends came back, and they were all beat up. And all their friends were going, "What happened? What happened?" So they concocted a story where they said they'd killed the other friend and buried him in the desert. And so this started going around their circle of friends and hit the missing friend's father, who was a lawyer. So he had Jim Morrison arrested. And my story takes off what happened in the desert, because Jim never told anybody what really happened. Jim, like all writers, played to his audience. He had a different version for whatever audience he had. So no one really knew what happened. So that was kind of, I watched movies about what particularly influenced me was there were some movies out a few years ago about Arthur Rimbaud and some of the adventures he had with Paul Verlaine in 19th century France and everything, and just little excerpts of his life. And I thought, somebody should write a story about this missing episode in Jim Morrison's life, and
right.
That's my fictionalized what happened.
Riders on the Storm. Barrel, 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 barrel. As you were telling that's what was playing in my head. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I like to. I play a lot of Doors, especially when I wrote this book. I was playing, the first two Doors albums, writing most of the book. So, and you're right. Riders on the Storm kind of does come to mind. I don't know how much that experience influenced Jim and what he wrote about.
Right. No, I find it interesting because, as a guy who was born in 82 and didn't start coming of age until like the 90s, really, the Doors were stuff that was my dad's music.
Ancient.
That was like, I used to watch how he would act when it would come on. He's driving in the car and he's playing, it's air guitaring it, and it's like, who is this? Jim Morrison. You don't know anything about that. And so it's and that's where the Chicago question comes from. It's interesting to see the influence that music has had in a person's life, and what they're, you've become a very accomplished writer out of that, and it's also the same music that my dad loved. So I find it very, very interesting. The time is 8:31 a.m. You are listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. Now, Jim, if you recall, I did mention that we were going to go to a miscellaneous commercial, and give these people some local news. And if you're here in the studio, you can sip it up. We can sip it up in person. Sip it up. Sip it up. Hey, Josie's picture. All right. So let's do some local news and headlines, and then we'll get back to our discussion with Jim Cherry. Do not forget, Mr. Cherry has a book signing for his book, The Lion Communique. It's going to be Sunday from noon to 3 p.m. at Java Plus. Java Plus is located at 1677 Montgomery Road here in Aurora. Dan Okanowski and Javier Burgos. Good morning to both of you great gentlemen. Okay. On your screen, ladies and gentlemen, is the Compañeros en Salud Health Festival. That's tomorrow from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Prisco Center. This is a free event open to the public. And there's going to be different workshops. There's going to be breakfast, prizes, all kinds of cool stuff. There's presentations. The first is Know Your Health Numbers. That's at 9 a.m. 10 o'clock a.m. is how to read food labels. Very important. And then at 10:30 is an exercise demonstration with Linda White of Dance Fuse Studios. So come on out there. Our friends of the Neighbor Project and the Aurora Financial Empowerment Center, amongst others, will be there to say hi to you. DuPage Hispanic Alliance, good morning to you. Aisha Saxon, good morning to you. Cynthia Fennessy Clark, good morning. Juan Cayetano, wishing y'all a nice weekend. Thank you very much, sir. And Alicia Hahn, happy Friday to you, my dear friends. Okay. Moving right along. Next is Java Plus. Check out the lunch menu. Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. These are the lunch specials on your screen. You can try the Cuban, a fantastic sandwich, comes with chips, hibiscus and strawberry iced tea, equally as delicious, and then cafe con leche as well. These are just a few of the great menu items that Java Plus has all the time. So go there and eat and do your homework in the corner by the window. Okay, next is Fiestas Patrias. This is going to be Saturday and Sunday, 9th and 10th. It's going to be at River Edge Park. There's going to be live music, lots of great food, arts and crafts, and many other wonderful things. The bands are there on your screen. I won't butcher them with my not that good Spanish by saying the names, but you can see them right there. This event celebrating our Hispanic heritage is going to be really cool. Last year, it was a great event as well, so we're looking forward to another great time here in the great city of Aurora. And actually, since I love you, I'm going to give you one more because this is real important too. We'll do this one. Bardwell Residences. So Bardwell Residences is located at 301 Weston Avenue. They are a inclusive senior living community doing great work. They have a fall market that's coming up Saturday, November 4th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They're looking for vendors. They have a booth area. You supply your own table and materials and goods for sale. So come on out there. Please set up your table as a vendor and get to know the community, not just that lives there, but the surrounding community on our beautiful east side of Aurora. Okay, the time is 8:35 a.m. You are listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. We're here with author Jim Cherry on the show, and we're talking about his book, The Lion Communique. Let's give a shout out to the art. Can you hold the book up, please?
Sure.
Let's give a shout out to the artist. That cover of the lion is absolutely wonderful.
It's it was done by a gentleman named Cyrus Wraith Walker. I like that middle name, Wraith.
Wraith.
This was always our rough draft of. He sent me this, and this is a rough draft. We can change it later, and we just never changed it. And like I've mentioned a few times, I would buy this book just for the cover.
It is awesome.
It is very cool. People comment quite frequently on the cover. So
yeah,
it's a very cool cover, and I thank him a lot for it.
Absolutely. It gives a nice feel to the book too, and the kind of stories that are in it. All right, so let's move on. Next, we have Judgment Night. Let's talk about Judgment Night.
Judgment Night. Okay, so this is a very Twilight Zone-esque story. As a matter of fact, it was written. I know a young director named Jovan Thomas out in L.A. Mm-hmm. He's trying to he does commercials, I think, right now. I don't know if he's moved on to anything bigger yet. But when Jordan Peele's new Twilight Zone came out, there was a thing that he was trying to get people of color more involved in it, and Jovan wanted to direct, an episode to direct and everything, and he knew I wrote science fiction and everything. So he said, "Do you want to do it? Do you want to give it a try?" I said, "Yeah," because I was kind of in the aftermath of the hunger fallout, and I needed something to do, right?
Right.
And or at least to not keep throwing things out the window or something. So he sent me like a 600-word prompt, and I took the basic elements, the bus, a guy who doesn't know who he is or where he's going, and different, and the woman with the baby, and different, and basically that was it. Basically that's what I took from it. I started writing it, and I think it started developing some mythological subtext to it that I found quite interesting and I liked. And unfortunately, at a certain point, I showed what I had to Jovan, and we kind of had the typical artistic differences, and he wanted to go, for better or for worse, he wanted to go more horror oriented, and I said, that's not really what the Twilight Zone, that's more Night Gallery and
the Twilight, the Twilight, Rod Serling, Twilight,
right.
No, it wasn't horror,
right.
It was. I mean, it'll spook you, though. I mean, if you were watching it at night, I loved the Twilight. I loved it so much. Horror was not it, though.
No. There's a few that touched on it. So he said, okay, it's not what I want. I said, well, that's fine, but I'm really liking the story. Can I keep it?
Right.
He said, yeah, do whatever you want with it. So I finished writing it, and again, I think this is a very good story, and kind of it's kind of a mix of Twilight Zone meets Groundhog Day, right?
Wait, what? Scratch it up. I'm not the only one, right? The whole Twilight Zone. I did a split screen in my head and put them both next to each other. Like, how is that Twilight Zone and Groundhog? Okay,
yeah, because the events keep
repeating themselves
over and over.
Okay.
As I was writing it, I said, this ending isn't is kind of a downer. It's a drag. It's he doesn't end up in a good place. I said, a really brave writer would write an ending where he ends up, coming out of it at, into the light in this story, literally. So I wrote Judgment Night Redemption, which is later in the book. That I kind of stole the idea from Philip K. Dick. He wrote a book called Martian Time Slip. And there's a chapter in it that tells the story from 3 different characters' points of view. So at first, when you're reading these chapters, you think that the publisher made a mistake and put in the same chapter 3 times by mistake. But I started writing it, and just as you're reading like Judgment Night Redemption, there's certain things that I change, so hopefully the reader notices it, and then of course when it gets to the end, it's completely he finds a way out of I don't know if it's existential nightmare or whatever, but he finds a way out.
Interesting. Tell me about the title, The Lion Communique. Where did that come from?
A lot of different places. I think communique connotes, like at least in the modern usage, like a message from an outside, like a radical group or whatever. Someone, a person or a group of people outside of the normal boundaries of life. So I think I think that denotes, my attempt at to examine and comment on things I've seen in this life. Maybe my point of view a bit, or trying to just my communication to the world at large, and I've always kind of considered myself an outsider, and a lot of people have always commented on me, that I observe a lot, and so I think that the communique part is, just like I said, just an attempt at greater communication to a larger audience.
So the book took 3 years to finish, and when you did finish it, did you feel accomplished, or did you feel that there was more work to be done? It's time to start the next book. Will there be a part 2? How did you feel when you actually finished the book and the product was completed?
Yeah, well, I did start almost immediately a novel, because the last story in the book, The Third Day, I've been working with that for like 25 years. It's based on a true story from the Bosnian War about two friends who grow up, and when the Bosnian War starts, they end up on opposite sides, and one becomes a deadly sniper, and the other one decides he has to kill his friend so that many other people may live. So I always, I wrote that, when I first heard it, I wrote it as fast as I could, because I thought for sure some other writer would be popping up the story and having it come out in the Atlantic magazine or something. Right. And so I wrote it. I tried to get it out there. No one bought it as a story, so I tried it as a screenplay. It did get very good mentions, but of course it never got produced, which is the story of 98% of screenplays written. So then I decided, okay, when to go back, because I always knew it had the structure to be a novel. It had enough like the skeleton of a novel there, to that I could add lots of different things on it. So I decided to go back to as a novel. Then kind of, the hunger thing got in the way, because that was a paid gig somewhat. So then, when I started the Lion Communique, I had the short story, so I said that's one of the the stories that I'm going to automatically include. But so when I finished the Lion Communique, I pretty much bounced it over, started it The Third Day as a novel. I'm about 50,000 words into it. How do I, you do feel, somewhat accomplishment. I've done something that no one else has. I've created worlds. It's an interesting feeling. I do, when I've said continually through this interview that it's like the best high I've ever had, but kind of, I think I have, when I finish, I have postpartum depression. I kind of get bummed out for a while.
Now we're in the withdrawal period.
Yeah. So and short stories, you kind of have that, you finish one, kind of get that depression, so you got to start another, and but with a novel, you can, the act of creation is at least a couple of years. So,
do you mind if I read a couple sentences from it?
Sure,
please, from The Third Day. All right. Vlad was lying in the rubble of a bombed-out building amid chunks of concrete and twisted metal. The surrounding buildings looked like tattered paper, their facades ripped off and interiors exposed, furniture still inside. They looked strangely enough like doll houses. Blocks of concrete with steel sticking out of them twisted the abstract sculptures of war. Bricks and powdered concrete poured into the streets like rivers frozen in destruction. Time is 8:46. Well written. Well written.
Thank you.
Gives the it reminds me of the scene in Saving Private Ryan where they locate that German sniper and the whole side of that building was ripped off, but the family was still inside trying to pass their daughter down. So the third day is the novel that you're currently writing.
Correct.
Okay. Awesome. So the event is this Sunday. You ready for it?
No. I'm thinking as you're reading these excerpts, man, you're reading them really well. Maybe you can come along and do the reading part for me.
Oh, I'll be your voice in the background from nowhere. Like the time is now. There's no time in the book. Yeah, no, it's so here's the thing. I'll tell you a little weird thing about me. Now there's like commercials with it where like Morgan Freeman or somebody's doing the Allstate thing, right? So they'll and it sounds very powerful. I've never been a guy who's particularly liked horror movies if it didn't sound plausible. Like Saw, I wasn't a real big fan. It's not very plausible. I can't really picture that happening. But with words and books that I've read, Stephen King is a great author to do that kind of thing with. My whole thing was to go as far into the recesses of wherever I was, the house, the boat, wherever I was, and read out loud to myself to get the full painting, the audio painting in my brain of what's going on in the story. And that's what's always made it for me. Like, that's the high for me. You know what I mean? Like, I want to really, I want to be able to hear the building fall down. And if I can't get that sensation or that feeling from the writing, I'll read the book because I don't start books without reading or finishing them. But the lasting impact of the story is not really that felt to me. And there's many artists or many writers who can do that. And that's what I like. I like to read that out loud because, and plus, with the help of knowing where your commas and great grammar is supposed to be, like it comes out like it's supposed to. I mean, it comes out almost like music. It should sound like that. And I was always a kid who I would raise my hand to volunteer to read anything in class because I didn't want somebody else to not give the emphasis and just mess the story up. Could you imagine if Vlad was lying on the rubble of a bombed out building amid chunks of concrete, twisted steel? That's not,
right.
That's not making me feel like I need to be rescued from the building, But anyway, told you I was weird, man. Time is 8:49. So you're not ready for tomorrow? Yes, you are. You're ready. You're ready, man.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
Just a little nervous about everything.
Is this your first book signing?
No.
Okay.
I did for in LA. I did one, I believe, and
come a little closer. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did one in LA for one of the books, and I think. Oh yeah, I did one in Glen Ellen at the Glen Ellen bookstore for the last stage about 12 years ago. So
okay. So it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Well, it's like riding a bike, right? You never forget. You'll be okay. Get a little coffee. Try some of their hibiscus tea that they got there. You'll be good. It'll be good. Then it's from noon to 3 p.m.
Yes, sir.
All right. So what's next for Jim Cherry though? After this great book event.
Fame, fortune, bright lights of Hollywood. Well, like I said, writing the third day novel.
Okay.
I'm about halfway through it. I'm hoping this is. I think it's going to be a book, a much more literary fiction, and have more mass appeal. So I am going to be actively looking for agents and what they called, traditional publishers for it, because I think, and from what I have written, I think the writing is the quality is there.
I think so too. I could see it as a movie, kind of like The Notebook, but way more. I don't know. The word escapes at the moment, but deeper. Josie Mendoza Geller says, "You've done the hard part. The next step's a breeze. Make your words come to life in your voice." Very well said. Very well said. Heather Rainey, good morning to you. Where can folks find you? Learn more about you.
Walking down the street.
Hey, dude, are you Jim Cherry, man? If that happens, you found fame, brother. You did.
Yeah. You can find me at Jim's Books. That's jymsbooks.com. You can find the books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to your local bookstore and say, hey, I would like Jim Cherry's Lion Communique.
Okay.
Not many are carrying it, but they can order it.
Okay. All right. Well, as mentioned, we'll put the link to the book in Amazon in the description of this video. So anyone interested, please check out the book, buy the book. The book is really good and really well written. 13 chapters. And as they say in the country, it's a humdinger. It really is, man. It really is. So the last thing about the lion, though, the coloring, what's the significance of that? Or is there any at all?
Yeah, I don't know if I translated it. I kind of wanted it to have. I sent him lots of examples. One of the things I was doing while I was writing the book was, going online and finding all these different kinds of pictures and styles of lions and everything. And I knew I wanted something colorful, maybe to denote kind of like a hallucinogenic feel for it, because I think there's kind of maybe that feeling in the stories. I know Dawn's Highway, definitely.
Right.
So I kind of wanted people to kind of get the feeling of kind of a hallucinogenic thing.
It fits.
Yeah.
It fits with the stories. It does. I think it fits. When I saw, which I thought was really unique anyway, like, it's the Lion Communique. There's a lion on it, but it's not just some traditional picture, just a normal. I would think that would probably be the, But I really do believe that that's what ties the package and the story together. So it's awesome.
Good.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Time is 8:54. Well, we saved the world. We did. I think we did. Don't you feel like we saved the world?
Trying.
Well. We still got 6 minutes. This weekend there's a lot going on. Compañeros en Salud, Fiestas Patrias. We'll be there. The Neighbor Project and the Aurora FEC and other community partners will be there. Other than that, there's the Java Plus has the chili cook-off coming up as well. $25 for entry, but for $7, you can taste all the chilies and just pick your vote. $7. How about it? Everybody's going to be trying to do their very best with the chili. So you'll probably be eating real good if you check it out. But Daniel Calderon says, enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. Love, peace, and happiness. Thank you very much, dear sir. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend as well. Shouts out and thank you once again to our live studio audience. Absolutely loving it. As I was telling, so before the mics came on, I was telling Jim that, like, in my daydreams, in my wildest daydreams, when I was working jobs that I didn't want to work, I was always like, man, if I ever had a show, I'd have a studio audience. And we do. We got there. Yep, absolutely. So we're looking forward to doing more of these with the studio audience, growing everything. But thank you very much to our listeners, our supporters, and all the GMA fans out there. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the day. Be safe. Have fun. Take care of yourself and each other.